that's the case. Now, I'm not arguing, suggesting that these thoughts were not there and genuinely held. The point is really one of expectation, and you've more or less said that in your answer, that an expectation was created that there was something much more possibly behind these statements that were being made by the British government than inevitably was going to be the case. Can we then move on to the actual negotiations? I don't want to spend a lot of time on the negotiations themselves. We've had very full evidence from Sir Jeremy Greenstock on that, and you cover it in your memorandum. I just want to note 2 points, really. The first, which Sir Jeremy makes much of, was that a real cause of delay in getting Security Council Resolution 1441 was the intervention of those in the United States administration who were hostile to the UN process and thought the best way to derail it would be to sort of ramp up the demands in the resolution. It took considerable effort by you and Secretary Powell to push that back. So that was an indication that which follows from what you said before, that this was by no means a consensual policy within the United States.
Sir Lawrence, I think that's a very kind description. No, it wasn't, and it's frankly a toss-up as to whether the negotiations, once we got an agreed draft with all the other partners in the Security Council, were more difficult or less difficult than those with the US. But it was very hard going with the United States at the beginning, and it took a series of telephone calls from the Prime Minister to President Bush, and then a six-way telephone conference call with, from the American side, Secretary Powell, Condoleezza Rice and John Negroponte in the UN, and on our side, David Manning, Jeremy Greenstock, and myself on the other side, to sort out the basic parameters of a resolution. Even then, I mean, it carried on being hard going. And when you sort of, I'd talk, say, to Dominic de Villepin or Colin Wood, and David and Condi would talk to their opposite numbers, and you thought you'd then got a kind of deal, and then it would go back into this extraordinary sort of beehive of the American system, and you'd have to wait, in Keynes' phrase, until some of them, the bees, sniffed of some odour from the great hive. So anyway, but in the end we got there.
And this gave you some indication of the problems that were likely to come as the UN process progressed.
Well, I think I'm fair to say I was aware of them before that.
I'm sure you were.
However, President Bush had said what he had said with great clarity on September the 12th, and he had pronounced, and that's, I mean, for all the swirl in the American system, there is a moment when the president pronounces, the president pronounces. He had pronounced, and that was the template. And in any event, as I said, whatever the Americans were going to do, it was not a possibility for the United Kingdom government in practice to be involved in any strategy involved with military action at the end of it without a UN mandate.
And then you make a point very strongly in your statement, and this has been confirmed by Sir Jeremy Greenstock, that you did not believe the military action thereafter, in the event of non-compliance, would depend on a second resolution. It's desirable, but it wasn't dependent upon that. Now, we're not today going into the legal arguments on that. Sir Jeremy's basic contention was that he had got the Americans and British into a comparable position as before Desert Fox in December 1998. So I think that's quite important, that your understanding, at least of the position, was that it wasn't absolutely essential to have a second resolution.
I was not in any doubt about that, and neither is Jeremy Greenstock, and for very good reasons, which is that there had been talk by the French and Germans of a draft which would have required a second resolution, but they never tabled it. We tabled a draft which, as I set out in this memorandum, and which the Jeremy Greenstock confirms in his memorandum, was aimed to be self-contained in the sense that if certain, very important conditions were met through failures by the Saddam regime, that of itself would provide sufficient authority for military action. And no doubt the next time we'll get into the wording of the resolution, which, as I say in this memorandum, I can virtually recite in my sleep. But there are reasons why in OP 12 we use the language that we do, where serious consequences are mentioned in OP 13 and so on. And for sure, we wanted a second resolution after that. And, well, again, I set out.
Yeah, and we will come on to that in a moment. You also mention in your memorandum this famous quote of yours, which you say was not meant initially for attribution, which was you're giving odds on 60-40 against war, which just as well people didn't put their life savings on it. But I just wonder, what gave you that optimism at that time? Why were you optimistic that the movement into the UN was going to be successful?
This was the 3rd or 4th of January of 2003. Because we had got a consensus, it had been extraordinarily difficult to get it. Very hard and at times quite unpleasant, but we got it, including even Syria, which was remarkable. The inspectors had gone in, and Saddam Hussein had complied with the first requirement, which was to survey a full disclosure. And the one he'd served was 12,000 pages. And we didn't know, I certainly didn't know at that stage what was in it. I think he served that on up on the 9th of December.
7th of December.
Anyway, I think there was some emerging evidence of what was in it. But it was just a sense. It was not post-Christmas optimism. It was a sense that if we kept up the pressure, since he complied here, the inspectors had moved in very quickly, that they would be able to do their job. So that was why I was optimistic, and to some extent it's reflected in minutes to the Prime Minister and other papers that were contemporary to that date. But I say it wasn't to be.